I am having the hardest time trying to chop up the Father Dan conversation into bite sized pieces because it just flowed in a way that there isn't a smaller part that has a neatly tie it up in a bow, beginning, middle, and end. So I'm just going to give you the whole thing. There's an hour left, and here it is Father Dan, the whole enchilada. This is a real fine point that leads to a lot of conflict. If you don't believe the same way I believe, then
Right.
you are on the outs. You are going to hell. You are condemned to not get the heaven that I'm describing as great if you believe the same thing I believe.
Right. So the church at Vatican II, a big meeting of all the bishops.
Right. In 1962?
64. It happened over a few years. One of the things they were working on was a document just in this regard, discussing the relationship with other the relationship of the church to other religions.
Specifically other Christian religions?
No, all.
Okay.
Like all
Islam
the rest of the,
and Judaism. And
everything. Buddhism, whatever you want to call
Zoroastrianism.
it. Jain, whatever. Yeah. So we have an understanding ourselves that God has given us these good things and we're supposed to share them. So it's our responsibility to bring them to the world. But we don't always get to everybody. We can't get to everybody. If you're thinking of the entire time and space of the world, people who existed before the time of Christ, does this mean they're condemned? Well, no, because the way our sort of Christian story unfolds, we look at Jesus when he dies and goes to hell, pulling up Adam and Eve and everybody else who's ready to go to heaven from death and brings them to heaven. So, things happen before us. But God has mechanisms of bringing people to heaven aside from those that He's given us to share. He tells us, go and bring this good news to all the world. Go teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. So we are called to do this baptizing. We are called to bring what we believe to be true to each other. And I would expect that anybody who's Jewish or Islamic or Buddhist or anybody else, when they found something that they believe to be true, want to share it. Heck, when the new restaurant opens in town and you say, that was a great place, I got to tell everybody. Or this new movie opens and, that was great, I got to tell everybody, you got to go see this movie.
Or I still want to get a table. I'm not going to tell anybody. There's a real fine balance between making sure the restaurant stays open
imagining that,
and keeping it to yourself.
Sure, but imagining that the goods of the world are meant for everybody and that there's enough tables and there's enough time to get to the movie.
You're a socialist.
No, I'm not a socialist.
There's enough for everybody. What do you...
No, imagining that. There's no stopping people from going to the movies.
Okay.
If something is good, you want it to be available to all people, and you should be eager to share the good things.
I'm delighted to share that with you.
Yeah, I'm not mandating everybody be
in particular if the
attend
message
this movie or go to this
restaurant that heaven is available to everybody, or salvation is available to everybody, or enlightenment, which we also briefly touched on last week, which potentially has the risk of different people understanding it in different ways. But if you figure out that there is a great good that is available to everyone and that the message for you is you're supposed to treat everyone with love, then through love you would want everybody to have that same opportunity.
Correct, yes. And yet we're limited, but I trust that if God wants to get somebody to heaven, God's working on, it's not just all on us. It's not just all on me. God's got other mechanisms for getting in touch with people, inviting them and getting them to heaven. Somebody who lived in this continent before 1492, I know that the others have gotten here, whatever, but just go with me on this. You've got people sincerely seeking after the
indigenous
truth.
People.
You've got the people who were here before and sincerely looking after, sincerely searching for, the meaning of life and the purposes of their existence, and searching after the good and the ultimate truths of the universe, and approaching them as best as any of us can by our own work, by our own reason, by our own contemplation, meditation, and our own, discussing these things with each other and coming to a greater understanding with each other. before the Christians even arrived, do these people, they never had Christianity, they were never baptized, ergo they must be in hell. Like that's not our stance. That's not our belief.
Is it anybody's belief? Because I feel like
I
that
don't-
seems familiar. That message is.
That's not the Catholic approach.
circulating.
I don't know.
Okay.
You want to talk to a Baptist? I don't know what they. That's. I don't know the specifics about their.
So those
Their
Baptists, they're
ecclesiology.
going to hell.
Well, no, I'm not certain about their missiology, about their their.
I am just teasing
their
you.
theology about this.
Obviously.
It's a. I know you are. I'm sure there are Christian groups who. Well, we know of them. There are Christian groups who believe that they're the only ones going to heaven, and the rest of us, well, enjoy hell. But that's not the approach we take. And we have documents from the church, discussing that we as a community, as the church, we as the children of God, as the people of God here. And as a body of Christ, we have our mission. We are meant to bring what we have to other people. But if we don't get to everybody, or if people can't hear the message from us because of some difficulty, that doesn't mean that God has abandoned them. God doesn't place all of his reliance upon the future of the world on the humans, because that's a bad policy. We are fallible, but
Inherently flawed.
Yeah, and thus the original sin discussion. There's some inherent flaws here that we just. So God has other mechanisms, whatever they might be. They're up to Him, and that particular individual relationship that each of us has with God, oftentimes we use these words, the good and the true and the beautiful. These are these exemplars, like the most perfect beauty, the most perfect goodness, the most perfectly true.
And
all of that lives in
platonic.
God. Yeah, it's platonic. Yeah, these sort of platonic ideals. These are in God, and I would expect that anybody, all of us, human beings, seek after these things because we have good reactions to them when we find them. Something is beautiful or delicious or whatever. And it can bring tears to our eyes. A perfectly good, a beautiful story, a beautiful dance, a beautiful meal. These things that we highly appreciate. Well, this is our traveling towards this beauty. We experience it once. We want more of it. We find a painting that just speaks to us, or a piece of music that moves us. All of this is our moving through beauty to the one who is the most ultimately perfectly beautiful.
And so
the same goes for truth, and the same goes for goodness.
Do we think that these examples of a food or a painting or something that is sublime
is a great word, yeah.
Do we think that represents the absolute and we hunger for the absolute because the danger of living in relativity is so uncertain, is so unsettled, is so, well, if you see it different than I see it, then what is definite? What can I rely on? Is that part of what the Platonic ideal of any given thing makes it so attractive?
Yes, I think so. Because we have, because the alternative is, as you said, either relatively good things or relatively beautiful or relatively true, and that's just not good enough. I think we want more. I think we're always going to want more.
Or that the whole point of relativity is that each individual's perspective, each individual's place that they're looking from has a way of interacting with the material world that is unique to that perspective, that is unique to that set of eyes, that place from which they're looking, and that what is unsettling about relativity is that your eyes are different than my eyes, is that your perspective on what is perfect and good and true just happens to slightly differ than what is perfect and good and true from my eyes, from my perspective. And wait a minute, does that call into question the validity of what is perfect and good and true from my eyes because you see it differently, and so therefore do I need to doubt? Right?
I see what you're saying. I don't think we need to. I think we need to recognize that not any one of us has the full picture. We don't.
Well, yes.
We only have our individual pieces of the puzzle.
Correct.
And
But
I mean,
from our
I would say
individual
that
perspective, perhaps we can see
different things, and that's why conversations.
all, right? Perhaps the possibility exists that whatever position you start from, that at some point you might be able to recognize the goodness and the beauty of everything.
Yes.
Of all that is. I am that I am.
Yeah. So I think that we have. I think that we have to be then engaged with each other in coming to understand all of it better. That's why dialogue between religions is so important, because we can see, okay, you're approaching it from this angle, I'm approaching it from this angle. I believe we as Christians have thrown a lot of our pieces together to make a picture, and we're going to say that we believe we've been doing this, with the help of Jesus, with the help of God.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, in assembling a worldview, that Buddhists have done the same thing and Muslims have done the same thing. But we do recognize that if someone says something that's true, it's true whether the Christians have said it or somebody else has said it. So people like to say that the golden rule appears frequently in different places. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Or, depending on which philosopher you're talking about, sometimes they like to rephrase it. Don't do anything to anybody else that you wouldn't have them do to you. Philosophers like to reword things. And there's a variety of these like constructions of that same principle from the philosophers, but even just from the religions. We have this approach. We have this thing that we believe is true and that we can see exists as true in other places.
Well, if from my perspective I can identify something that you, from your perspective, can also agree is true.
Yeah, then we got a good starting point.
Maybe,
and then we can discuss the other things here. Our conversations about like Jesus and Mary with Muslims, because Jesus and Mary appear in the Muslim in the Quran in the Muslim texts as well
as prophets.
Yeah, so this is like, okay, good. We can start talking about these people and how you see them, how they are written about in your texts, and how they're written about in our texts and our sacred scriptures, and then also our theological understandings beyond the scriptures of these figures, of these, I would say characters, but of these figures. It leads to us being able to have a pretty good dialogue, because you grasp onto a starting point, golden rule. You grasp onto a starting point with some ethical position. You grasp onto a starting point with a particular character, if I can use that term, and then we can progress from there. So I think, we have a couple people around here who I know belong to our parishes, who just right here in the city, who have been Muslim. One guy was an imam, and he dialogue, and he came to understand our understanding of Jesus differently from his, or
from his starting point.
And then that led him to some other. Okay, why do the Christians talk about Jesus like this? Okay, well, he explores it, discusses it more, discovers more, and then ultimately realizes that he likes our version better than his own. And I don't mean just his approach to Jesus, but the whole thing. I'm sure this is how others have also come from Islam to Christianity, that they came to understand our perspectives as preferable eventually. And I'm going to, we don't want to be like all celebratory and say, haha, that's one more for us and one less for you Muslims. That's not the point here. The point
but
is,
our softball team is going to kick their
yeah, exactly. And that's not the goal here, but it is to make sure that we sincerely follow where our properly formed conscience leads us, where God is leading us. And but some of that is just based on our interactions here on earth. Another man in a similar position as this former imam that I'm thinking of right now might have a very different set of circumstances and never have met anybody who quite explained it in the same way that this guy did. Does that mean he's abandoned to hell forever? No. It just means that he didn't have he didn't have the same opportunities or advantages or whatever to explore it in another way, and that doesn't So I don't want to say that this should be like little victories all over the place. We're not. We shouldn't be triumphal about these things. It's about people's salvation. It's about us all coming to know the truth, and it's not a competition. We've had our competitions, and that was who gets control of the Holy Land, and we had the Crusades, and that's okay. We've done that too, and it's not to say that we shouldn't have come to the rescue of people who were being.
So has the whole moral construct of the Catholic Church had such a sea change that once upon a time it made sense to participate in geopolitics and conduct the Crusades and slay the infidels, versus now we don't believe the same thing? What does that mean? Is that an evolution in the understanding of the actual Church of what it is to believe in the things they believe?
No,
or why was it okay to have the Crusades in the 1300s and the 1400s?
Well, I'm no church historian, so other people are going to have different, probably more complete perspectives than I. But a lot of times with the Crusades, we were coming to the rescue of people who were being attacked. So Christian Europe,
specifically of small Christian communities in majority,
the Holy Land, yeah. So if Islam is coming to conquer, and I don't have all these characters down. I don't have all these stories down.
Yeah, I don't want to risk stepping on toes either because of my own unfamiliarity.
Yeah, my ignorance of every crusade and of every crusade. We had Saint Francis going to during the one crusade to have a conversation with some Muslim leaders, trying to negotiate to say, please don't conquer. It would be nice if you didn't. But I think our theological approach to this is different from Islam writ large. I'm not talking about any particular Islamic people that I know, but generally the Islamic stance is, go conquer and bring people into Islam by the sword. And Christianity was go convince people, teach them, tell them the stories, and go convince them. Now, have we had our times too where we were sort of
also
forcing,
using the sword?
Yeah, or being, but that's not. I would say these are places where we fell into things. Rather,
what do you mean?
Meaning we fall. We make
from
mistakes.
Our own standards.
From our own, what should have been our own standards.
Okay.
Yeah. But oftentimes, like as written, Jesus' command is to go out and teach. Go teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. Okay. But in Islam, you're specifically told go conquer by the sword. So it's a, and again, I'm not saying that the Islamic people that I know or that are good relations here in town are regard the that I'm worried that the Islamic people and the mosques here in town, they're going to conquer us. I'm not worried about that. That's not how every.
And you also don't want to offend someone so greatly by insulting their understanding of their
own religion,
prophet and so forth. And that is a risk. I am attracted to the idea that the consciousness of humanity at large has evolved over the centuries, that there are statistics about the prevalence or the frequency of violence and of murder and of horrible things that have significantly gone down. That as
really, because the 20th century was like one of those violent centuries, given wars and I don't know.
Most violent, or had better technologies able to more rapidly kill people efficiently.
Maybe that's a better. Maybe that is the difference.
And somebody I was talking to, and maybe it was
flamethrowers, and machine guns.
And said something bombs. About that the message of Jesus at the time that he was walking the earth was absurd to a Roman soldier who would say, "What do you mean turn the other cheek? What do you mean not let power take whatever power can take. That it was nonsensical.
Right, because the Roman
to
Empire
that conception of the world.
was constantly expanding, bringing the Pax Romana to everything they could touch.
The Pax.
Well, yeah.
Romana.
Look, if everyone belongs to us, then there's no other to fight against.
Are we spelling
Until
it
then,
P-A-X or P-O-X?
P.
Come on now. Boom.
Right. So yeah, they were engaged in this. We'll conquer it all.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because we're going to bring goodness to the world, which is the same thing the Nazis were doing, right?
Sure,
They were
yes.
saying we understand the world in a better way than anybody
Yep,
else,
and
and
we're also
therefore
smart.
we will enforce.
And we're smarter than everybody else because we're the master race, and we'll just run everything.
And we're so good looking.
Sure, and we'll just run everything. That's not.
And are we kidding ourselves? They have nothing on the Irish.
Meanwhile, Christianity has always been a plurality that has allowed differences from place to place. You know, we've done things.
The word allowed, because I feel like it early on started to split into sects that interpret this little detail differently than you interpret it, and therefore we can't be in the same building worshiping in the same way.
Right? We had some heretics early on, but that really didn't happen fully until 1054, when there was finally just the Great Schism. But that's
which was Eastern and Western.
Eastern and Western.
Yeah.
That's 1,000 years in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 1,000 years into this project. We're only 2,000. That's only halfway to where we are now.
Right.
So, yes, there were some heretics. Yes, there were some constant discussions. We had councils. But we had things happening in different languages. Let's
define heretics, because I might make the case that there's things that I've said that would absolutely get me banished from the way the church was organized even 50 years ago. I'm a saucy fellow.
Sure. Well, so a heretic is going to be somebody who's a part of the church already and who stubbornly spreads and encourages some belief, some approach to Christianity that is counter to the beliefs. Now, the beliefs are laid out pretty simply in the Nicene Creed. It's not long; it's this much. It's not like it's a whole. It's shorter than the Bible. It's there's a lot in there, and when you're thinking of somebody like Arius, who has said, "Well, Jesus was just a human," when it's been pretty clearly defined before then by all the bishops of the church, from whatever language group they were coming from. We've got things happening in Gaul, and things happening in Jerusalem, and things happening in Greece, and we've got a lot of the church growing up in different places. It's happening. You've got the church growing up in India, and it's happening. It's growing up in different languages, in different places, in different milieus, and yet there's a standard commonality based on this creed and based on these scriptures. Here's the things that we do together. Here's the things we believe together. Now, we're not going to call someone who's Buddhist a heretic because they're not part of the church to begin with, and then said something different.
So officially, to be a heretic, you have to be a participant in the whole thing, and then say something contra.
Yeah. And so for Arius to say Jesus isn't divine, he's just a guy, goes against the basic tenets of what it means to belong to this club.
What did Meister Eckhart say along those lines? I feel like there was some controversy at some point that is connected to that very idea, and which is I feel like a very interesting. Yeah, because I don't remember it either. I think. Is this right here the nugget of whether or not he was only human or both human and God that is really the source of any of this conflict?
Well, no, I think there's a variety of ways that people fall into sort of these misunderstandings that when we're stubborn with them become heresies. People become sort of excommunicated. So we're talking about whether Jesus has two natures. We're talking about whether Jesus is fully human and fully divine, or half human, half divine, as if he's some sort of like Hercules figure.
Like a demigod.
Yeah, right. Is he like so? All of these, but once the once the church has gotten together and sort of clarified these things and came to understanding, some of which I get are kind of complicated because we've got
Well,
we have
holding
God
two
become
opposing
man.
ideas
Yeah,
at the same time.
But sometimes our paradoxes are beautiful. Sometimes our paradoxes are we need to hold both of these up because they're both true, even if we don't exactly know how they all fit together with each other. I don't want to say they're imposing. They're just there's something more beautiful about holding them both and believing them both to be true. So we like this and that to be both true, and there are things that are false, but these two we're going to hold together, and we're going to see how they play together as if we can hold them both.
But it's a little different than apples and oranges, right? It is
Yeah,
literally...
I mean, so if we're going to talk about Jesus' humanity and his divinity, this is where Arius and others get hung up about whether God is about whether Jesus is just a man that God picked out and said, you're gonna be my prophet, and God's done that before, or this is actually God come down to earth, being born into this world, our incarnational sort of theology here that Jesus can be that God can be in one place walking around and still be everywhere because he's omnipotent and he's omnipresent. If he is God, then how does that work? He's like, well, it just does somehow, because God doesn't stop running the universe when he decides to become human, when he decides to enter into it. But there's something beautiful about God's willingness to enter into it. There's something beautiful about that we're going to call it a compassionate act. I will go there myself and help. A firefighter runs into a building. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to get that person out of there. That's
despite the personal risk.
The personal risk.
And
it gets God killed.
Actual
Can God die?
Risk,
yes, no. We're going to stick with both. Yes.
The actual personal risk is only being undertaken by this physical version, right? Because he doesn't, in fact, die.
But the physical risk isn't what God does. Jesus does die, but it's not
human. Jesus does.
But it's not only the physical risk of death. It's the whole package. It's being rejected. It's being hurt by those whom you love. It's being abandoned or being betrayed by those whom we love. And that isn't... Sometimes those things are more painful than just death. If I believe that God can come back, that Jesus can come back to life because God brings him back from the dead, that's great. What's more interesting to me here is that he can be injured. He can be hurt.
And I think emotionally
God can we can cause God pain. I know some philosophers are going to say you can't change God. Yes, I know I can't change God. And yet we can sadden, in a way, God in the same way that children can sadden their parents because they have let them down, or because vice versa. But I'm imagining like a parent whose child has become an addict, and it just hurts them to the core to see their own children, just so far out of the away from what all their hopes were for them when they gave birth to them, when the baby was born.
You've touched on a very interesting element. In other words, what hurts is that I had hopes, and my hopes were disappointed. My hopes were dashed. My hopes ran into, crashed on the rocks. But the hopes all sort of lived in my own imagination, in my own set of expectations. I created that. And so my disappointment, I created my disappointment by having expectations that you would be A, and you turned out to be Q, and oh my God, that hurts me. But I built that hurt. I built that pain by having the expectation in the first place.
Well, so what's the solution? Have no expectations? Have no hope? And say, well, what's going to happen is going to happen. Well, I don't believe that, and that's why I am going to interpret and understand God as a parent. We like to say our Father, who has been who has been hurt, disappointed, saddened, desires something better than what we currently have, if he didn't care, we don't want. I don't want to imagine God as abandoning his hopes for us all.
Well, so a premise that I have is that in this material world we live in, that the whole point of there being a material world, the whole point for a changeless, eternal, divine being choosing to experience the material world is precisely to have the experience of emotions. And emotions that
interesting. So you think the emotions can only be had here?
Yes. Oh. Yeah. That if you are changeless, if you are God, that there's no way to have an experience of yourself other than by making yourself smaller, because the way we experience things in materiality is only in contrast. I am sad only in that I am having an experience of the opposite of being happy. I am warm only in that I am not cold, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. I am anything that you choose to experience only to the degree that I am at the moment not the opposite. So in order to feel happy, in order to have the experience of being happy, you have to also have experienced sad. And if you are a divine, eternal, changeless being, none of that experience is available to you. And the way to experience more of yourself, the way to experience any, frankly, of yourself, the way to have an experience is to, for some period of time, reduce your understanding of who you are to something smaller that can now feel the contrast between hot and cold, that can now feel the contrast between elation and despair. And that's the project of being born into the material world. And that is original sin. Right? The sin, so-called, is to come away from your changeless, eternal reality so that you can experience the joy of remembering, oh my God, I am that I am. I am God. And that Jesus, I'm not saying that he's only a person, but that we all have within us the capability of being like Jesus. And that he wasn't even trying to start a religion and say, hey, follow me. He was trying to set an example and say, hey, if you do these things that I do, you might also have this same experience of living simultaneously in the world of materiality and of sadness and of happiness and of good and bad and of joy and despair, while also remembering that you are everything, that you contain everything. Have I done it? I've converted the rock star priest of Albany.
No, I have a question, because this is where it's getting interesting to me, because this is interesting. But I don't know how. You mentioned an eternal, changeless being. Okay. How can an eternal, changeless being have any sort of momentum or desire for experiencing things in a relative sense, in a here on Earth?
Yes. How can it have desire? That's a good question.
But even to move from heaven to earth, to use that terminology, to move from the eternal into the particular. If that being can't experience it here, then there's nothing to push that down to here in the way you just described it.
I hear you, and I don't have an answer. Really, what I think we're talking about is the why. Why would an eternal, changeless being desire to experience anything other than eternal changelessness?
Right, because it would Aristotle, interestingly, Aristotle, in discussing this, the more we become like God, and remember, this is before the time of Christ. This isn't even anywhere where Judaism. This is Greece. And he's dealing with a pantheon of gods as his basic.
All of whom seem to represent characteristics of
humanity. Yeah. So he's the milieu he comes from is this state religion and this state mythos of the pantheon of gods and everything, just as you described. He would discuss, the more we become like God, the more unchanging we become. The God is is unchanging and motionless. This is this philosophical, unchanging God that I think
that's available for human experience.
Yeah, well, that I think that you're referring to as well. This Aristotle's one perfect, eternal being.
Is that connected to the word the monad?
No, I don't think so. I think that's a logician's term. But I'm getting confused. I'm just remembering this one Aristotle's God, we could say. His conception of God as this eternal being. He causes other things to be in motion, but God himself is still and is immovable, is just this entity that can't be changed. It causes us to move, causes the world to have its changing, its growth, its patterns. But if the closer we get to that being, the more still we become, because we're approaching some sort of idea of perfection. I don't know how that, as in a way beautiful as everything you just said is. I don't understand how something that is eternal and perfect and still can have a desire for anything. I know I've just said that as a Christian, I'm going to say that, yeah, God, you can hurt God's feelings. And I'm going to believe that God is still perfect, unchanging. I know that, but I know I'm holding these paradoxes. I know that ours is a religion that holds some things in beautiful not contradiction, but in beautiful sort of paradox with each other. But I don't know how. So I'm happy to say God can be hurt, and God can desire something different for us than what he and this is what I use all the time. But I've never taken that as also thinking that God might have a desire to experiencing something new, because I would imagine that all that somehow exists already within the perfection of God. He already has a complete understanding. He's already omniscient. He already knows it all. So I don't know how a desire to come to earth.
Everything, nothing exists. There's no motion, and so really, what we're talking about is the very beginning of everything, and why you
Big Bang now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
I'm just creation, or
I mean, all of these stories that any different culture comes up with to describe the beginning of how anything happens at all. Like even before the Greek pantheon of gods, there were the Titans, and then there were those were the ones with one eye, right? Watching
that's Cyclops.
The Cyclops. And there were sort of more primordial, powerful beings, and each sort of new generation of gods somehow overcame the previous primordial. One, yeah. But each earlier version had less and less form, less and less shape. So the question at the beginning of it seems to be, why go from nothing to anything? And
that's a great question. Why is there anything instead of nothing?
Yeah.
That is a question.
And I think desire is part of it. I weirdly, although if...
But here's I think we're at different points here. The way I'm understanding God's desires, and the way you're talking about, from a Christian perspective, and the way you're talking about an eternal perfect being having a desire, are different desires. I think the way you described it, and correct me if I'm wrong, God has a desire to understand things differently, to be limited for the sake of coming to some new understandings. And I'm going to say God desires to create, to build anything, whatever God feels like building, as long as it's good.
I don't think those are really different. That desire is kind of closer to touching on it than any other word that we have stumbled on so far. But that when you say God has the potential to be hurt, that word God is already changeable, which is to say, not eternal and still and changeless, but that the desire for the eternal, still changeless entity is to experience itself, right? As soon as anybody, is it Judaism that says that we can't have a word for God because it's too big? Any word would automatically make it too small.
Well, even the way Christians approach it, but
Yeah,
Judaism really
100%.
makes it like
100%
you don't
I feel
even
that
say
way.
the word in Judaism.
Exactly.
You don't write it down.
And I think that bespeaks a level of respect and reverence for
Exactly.
this topic that is so big that to
Yeah.
put it in words makes it smaller already.
Already limits
I sort of
it,
feel
yes.
the same way about the word God, although I find it to be useful as a shorthand, maybe. But as soon as anybody says God, he does this, I'm like, well, that cuts out half of what there is. There's another idea that is connected to this project of Jesus's in being divine and being born into this limited human form that suggests that part of the project for him was to fully embody both a masculine and a feminine half of how to be. And you might
That's very yin and yang. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you might briefly sort of describe that as the feminine is the compassionate and the masculine is the action. But any of those ways are pretty reductive.
Yeah.
But that the project for him was to embody all of to not be smaller either by gender or by nationality or by any way that we divide ourselves into smaller groups. And honestly, the project of being born into a material body is itself the divine making itself smaller.
Yes.
Right? You know what fractals are?
Yeah. And math. Yeah.
Yeah. So a fractal is a smaller piece of a bigger thing that has all of the characteristics of the bigger thing in it. And there are videos that you can go that are very trippy where you got a kind of
Trippy's
circle
the word.
thing, and you go in and then you find that there's little details in it, and then you zoom in closer on a detail, and then that turns out to have way more details, and all of those individual details have the same characteristics as the whole big picture did in the first place. And that's what individual humans are as a piece of the divine. They are fractals, and they contain all of the information that is in this eternal, unchanging being, walking around with us every day in every cell in our body. And that's what DNA really describes, is the whole plan, is the whole everything.
Yeah.
It gets weird. It gets weird. But that the project of becoming smaller for this eternal, changeless existence is to come to understand and appreciate itself in more detail. And so all of life, all of the unfolding, all of the multiplying, all of the turning into all these different individuals and ways of being expressed, whether it's animal, mineral, human, all of which still contains all that is in God. That the whole purpose of that is just this eternal, changeless thing coming to appreciate what an enormous thing it is to be, just to be. And we're just part of that project. We're just, each of us, defining a different perspective, to go back to that previous idea, a different location from which to see all that is. And everything that is a mirror to your own perspective. So you're seeing me as a reflection of you, in other words, I'm sitting here in this chair as a way to reflect back to you, Father Dan, who you are, and vice versa, and the chair and the table and I heard somebody describing it as, you are walking on a path that is unfolding in front of you, but you are also the path experiencing itself being walked on, and you are also all the places you will go, and they are experiencing you back in exactly the same way that you're experiencing them. And it is totally trippy, but but it starts to stumble on this idea of maybe that's what Jesus was better at, more advanced at, having figured out that everyone that he encountered was also divine, and that if they would follow the example he was setting, they might have that same discovery themselves, because when you're trapped in material reality, it is exceptionally challenging to see outside of the idea that you're separate, that you're not me, that I'm not you, that I'm not the Pac-Man machine, but the Pac-Man machine represents to me everything that I think about the Pac-Man machine. By the way, here we are in a rectory, and there's a Pac-Man machine.
Yeah, that was a. It goes to the school every once in a while.
Okay,
but it can't be out there all the time because
no,
you play with it. But this is
kids have genetics to learn. They got Mendel to study.
Right? Yeah. See,
it's crazy.
So there's so much in there that I get, and there's so much in there that I don't get.
I know. and the world is almost set up to be hard to see through, right? That the Eastern and sort of yogic cultures describe it as a veil that prevents us from perceiving the reality. And here's where the Matrix comes in. Because the key scene in the Matrix at the very end, when Neo looks down the hallway and all of a sudden everything is the numbers running up and down the screen, and now he's just part of the field. He is just, in the same way that a wave in the ocean is a temporary shape that the ocean takes only to drop back into just being part of the ocean. It's both the ocean and this individuated part of the ocean at the same time, as are each of us being born into human bodies. And when Neo had that moment of seeing that everything was just field, suddenly his ability to manipulate the field and himself in that field was greatly enhanced. And
then you get the climax of the movie.
The Agent Smith is raining blows on him, and he stopped the bullets midair. He affected reality, and so my interest in any of this, I've always been fascinated by the idea of magic. And so a movie like The Matrix that suddenly shows somebody able to manipulate reality that way, it's great. It'd be fantastic if you could do that. I can't do that.
Can you not?
I invite you not to fire a bullet at me because I don't think I've got the pieces.
I mean, that's
the question. Can you not? Yeah, maybe it is available.
And I don't mean that in particular. Well, but I mean, do you feel... We should recognize that we have agency and that we can change the world. I'm not going to say stopping bullets midair.
We have to believe it. We can't do it unless we actually believe it, and that's faith.
Yes. But I'm also, and I know Jesus says you've got faith size of mustard seed, you can move mountains. I'm not saying that we don't have, that we should be looking for magical agency, but to just be fully actualized in our particular agency that we have as human beings. We don't even fully actualize that sometimes. And that's, I think, a sadness. So
feels limiting.
I think it's more I think it's more powerful than the flashy stuff is flashy. I stopped the bullets in midair. Good for you. So attractive. But how many people do I know who have just made an impact on the world and didn't have to do anything magical?
For example,
I had in a previous assignment, there was a woman who began the thrift shop, began the preschool, and contributed to the food pantry, kept all these things running by her willpower. I don't know where she found the time in the day. She knew who to ask. She knew she delegated
a little.
She grew in such a way, and she learned all the things she needed to learn, and then she went and she did all of it. And suddenly, the poor were taken care of because there was a food pantry, there was a thrift shop. The children of town had a preschool that was practically free for them. I don't know, and it wasn't just her. It was, she had teams of people, but she orchestrated all of it, and she had such power, and none of it was about stopping bullets. And if she had the magical power, like some people, we hold up these great figures, Martin Luther King or somebody we celebrated last month.
Is it fair to describe Thrift Shop Lady as having done a miracle?
I don't get to determine from the church what's a miracle and what isn't, but yes.
Well, that's.
But I would argue, because this all happened before I was ever there, and I was always just told, no, she started it all, and I was like, okay.
Other people did the term miracle too small?
Yeah, without defining it. Yeah, exactly. So
or too big, such that this doesn't qualify.
Definitely a miracle if I got to choose it, but only in that. But I recognize that any of it only got done because this woman was such a prayerful person. She kept in contact with the divine regularly and deeply, and couldn't have done any of the rest of it. My assumption is that she couldn't have done any of the rest of it had she not been in that position. So it wasn't just her education. It wasn't just her upbringing. It wasn't just her gumption. It was her prayer and her
belief.
And her belief and her faith. Yeah. So
and because
yes, a miracle.
she believed, other people caught a little bit of that belief. They got infected by her belief.
Right. And people
participated.
joined the teams. They went also to work at the thrift shop and at the preschool and in the food pantry. And again, I'm putting too much all on one person. I know it was teams who built it from the beginning, but the leader often gets the credit. Even if it's General Lee, or Eisenhower,
that made the whole thing happen. So,
So there's a lot here. Yeah, go ahead.
How is it that you thought, well, this is a good idea to sit down with this guy, right? I wrote you a letter.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I thought you were great. I think
I take almost every invitation that comes to me. That's why.
All right.
Because all of it is because I'm curious about all of it. I'm willing to do most anything within reason that I know is
all right.
immoral.
Note to self: be more humble. Rockstar Priest doesn't care about you specifically. He does everybody. No, I think that my belief that I had started thinking about this channel for some periods of months, and I wasn't sure what it was going to be. Originally, it was going to be like talking to retired people about what's retirement advice. And then it became, that's boring, but then it became, I bet these people who've lived a while have stories. Let me just collect some stories. I'd like to hear some stories. And then I started to talk to a couple people, and I had written down, I started with, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write 40 questions. And one of my questions was, what's more important, faith or confidence? And I asked Miss Debbie, and she said, oh, faith. Definitely faith, because with faith, you can have the confidence. You can do everything. And then that sort of started to turn into, I'm interested in how people come to where they come to. And this started to turn into, suddenly I'm talking to a lot of people about what they believe, what their personal faith is. And I'm realizing, okay, I haven't really dug into that for myself. And then you came wafting out like Jesus. Oh, by the way, here's my idea for you to get rich. You remember those sneakers kids used to have where they had wheels in the back and they could wheel out? You make sandals with wheels in the back, and then anybody can look like they're floating like Jesus down the sidewalk.
I'm a klutz. I will fall over and break a leg.
You just have to invent them and patent them, and that's your boat.
Okay, there we go.
Although you probably took a vow of poverty.
Simplicity, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Some religious sisters, brothers take vows of poverty. Mine is of simplicity.
Okay. How are you doing on that?
Good.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah, that was a whole other line of questioning.
Simple.
That's a whole other line of questioning.
That's another day.
I'm interrupting myself from the basic story of somehow I wrote you a letter because I was like, this guy's great, and I'd love to talk to him. And you were like, yes. It turns out that your yes was less miraculous than I wanted to describe it or believe it for myself, but. Nevertheless, here it is. Here we are sitting talking to each other. Did you get the email saying maybe the church should send us to go look at Francis's bones?
Oh, that sounds like fun. No, I didn't see that.
Well, I basically said, do you suppose that the diocese has the budget to...
the diocese is currently in bankruptcy, has nothing that's for anything extra.
A little side fund?
No.
We're just talking about a couple of days.
Yeah,
and we'll probably have some pasta.
Okay. I haven't been to Italy in years, and it would be fun.
Right? We've only got a couple of weeks.
I know, that's the problem. I don't have time in the next couple of weeks.
And I think that they might have capped it at 400,000 reservations because there's only so many hours
of a day
in a month when they're on display, and so we might need you to pull some strings to get us one of those. I don't know slots.
I say yes to lots of things. I don't know strings to pull, unfortunately.
What if I believe more?
Well, I don't.
It's not happening.
You can move mountains. Yes. and you know what? I do like to say yes to things.
You and me, Assisi, within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, I got schools to run. I've got schools to run and make money for.
They know what page to turn to.
Only if there's a substitute teacher in the class making sure they do it. But to your point about the fractals, which I wanted to respond to and I didn't get a chance to, that we talk about. From the Christian perspective, we talk about, or the Jewish perspective as well, God breathing life into, we got the 7 days of creation. Our sort of primordial story, our prehistory creation myth.
In the beginning was the Word.
Exactly.
Which is vibration.
Is different than, I think, the way that many other cultures have theirs, in that God is already sort of eternal, and we never move away from that. He creates everything 7 days, But then when he's got Adam and Eve, he breathes life into them, meaning everything that is inside of God gets breathed into them. And yeah, in a more limited, particular way, not the eternal. And yet that divine image, that divine likeness, that divine breath, I would say anything living, I don't know about the Pac-Man machine, but anything living that has life in it, the trees and the cattails when they were alive, and all the animals and the fish and all of these things that have been given a share in not just existing like a rock, but in living. We should feel ourselves connected to these other things, as you were saying. I fully believe it, that we should feel ourselves and take the time to recognize and to be connected to all of these things. But I don't think. But I just don't know how much I want to. I don't know. I'm getting. That was a few minutes ago now, and it moved past. And I had a thought and I lost it. But I don't know. I just don't. I want to affirm in what you said, that we use different words from our own perspective. But I don't know if becoming the tree, or like Neo in the Matrix, recognizing it's all the same code, which is a part of the code. I don't want to, and yeah, we all share the same, we can say, life force from God, but I don't want to. But I don't know if I can become the tree in any significant way. That aside from the relationship of one of God's creatures, living creatures, with another one of God's living creatures, and being able to have a relationship there that's different, that's maybe different than the way you were describing it. So I can see, I don't know, I can see, as I said when you said all that, there's so much there that I get and so much there that I don't get. So I just wanted to affirm those things that I did get.
Okay.
That I find myself.
So I heard you say you don't become the tree, and I must have said something that sparked that way of expressing it, which I'm not sure what it was I said that, but it was connected to the matrix and the field and the numbers running up and down and being part of the field that you could describe as the quantum field, meaning that so 95% of the mass of the universe is dark energy or dark matter that we don't have a way of even measuring, of even looking at.
Yep.
But potentially that is the quantum field. And the nature of the quantum field is that it is indefinite until it is observed, right? That the potential of any one atom or molecule or a neutron in an atom is that only by measuring it can we locate it or have its mass.
But then you've affected
it.
But
then not only have you affected it, but the mechanism by which you affected it, by which you determined what it was your observation, was your perspective, you looked at it in that moment, and it became the thing that it was at the very moment that you looked at it. And it wasn't that. That was one of the field of possibilities for it up until that point that you observed it. Mm-hmm. And that this also sort of describes the mechanics by which we can affect our material reality, by observing it at a particular point in time, or by believing that it is going to be in a particular location with a particular mass at a particular time. And that all of those other places, all of those other possibilities, possible manifestations of that neutron are dark matter, right? They don't exist until they're actually observed, until they're sort of locked into one position by the observation of one observer. And that in the same way that you called the cattail alive until it was cut to put in this jar, but it's still alive to the degree that you're looking at it, to the degree that it has reality by your observation of it. It's still participating.
But it's never going to continue to grow and to make
it won't continue to grow
and to pass on its genetic material to another plant. It's not going to give seed. It's not going to have children at this point. And so I think of that as essential to life, not just existence. Now,
reproduction.
I was trying to make that comparison between existence and life. But what's fascinating here, what I found myself, is that this discussion of physics, would it be physics? I guess it would be physics. Is also a.
You got a budget meeting. I think.
Probably whatever. This discussion of physics is also what a discussion, similar discussions in the philosophy of aesthetics, in that artists, in discussing their art or their craft, it has in the philosophy of aesthetics, a piece of artwork has a life very different from that which created it. Than the person who
a piece of art.
A piece of artwork, a painting, the Mona Lisa has a whole different existence because of the way people observe it.
Because of the new observers of
because of the observers of it, it gains social significance. It gains historical significance. It gains
as can a rock. Take for example gold or
sure,
copper,
exactly, any sort of thing any sort of or a particular mountain. We talk about mountains all the time. Jerusalem, Sinai, Mount Marcy. These things have their importance. They have been by the way that we observe them, by the way that people look at, appreciate, ascribe meaning to them. But the philosophy of aesthetics, the philosophy of art, has a lot to say on this matter, which I'm sure is beyond what we're talking about today. But I just wanted to point out what the beautiful left brain, right brain complementarity here of the physics conversation and then an artist's conversation. Which
aren't really different. Right? An artist is just another perspective, another place from another location from which to observe the field, let's say,
the universe,
and to choose to express one particular aspect that observer is experiencing. So for instance, the Van Gogh stuff, because he had whatever problems that he had, made him paint things the way he saw them.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And we all look at them as, wow, that's so expressive in a particular way. And really, he's just accurately noting down what he saw because he didn't see very well.
And for us to put that, to allow his contributions to the conversation to not be squashed.
Us.
To be, exactly.
Not during his lifetime.
Right, not during his lifetime. But to allow his contributions to be part of the great conversation of all humanity, in a way, in the way that we have these, including this conversation, so as to come to a better understanding of each other and of the universe and of, I would say, God's purposes for us all. I think that's part of the reason I say yes to whoever calls, because it's an opportunity to have these sorts of conversations. So thank you.
All right. My new best friend, Father Dan Quinn, the rock star priest of harmony. No, I will never say it again. I've enjoyed so much this time with you. I would do it again, 100 times.
Sure.
Perhaps on a plane to a sea.
Okay.
We'll see who we can talk to.
They're very good.
We need budget. We got.
I don't even know who in CC to ask
to
get. I wouldn't even know who to ask to get a ticket. Not a clue. Doesn't mean
less helpful than I was hoping for.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a big place and it's a big church. There's a lot of people. So, and meanwhile, just like Albany, sometimes it's also pretty small. So,
is this conversation roughly what you imagined it would be?
From the clips that I saw of your other videos, in a way, but much more interesting than I. I was happy to be surprised. This is fascinating.
Honestly, I feel like those other ones were kind of practice for me. Oh, rehearsal. We didn't even talk about you being a theater kid.
We can have other conversations.
We're going to do this again. We're going to do this again.
All right, thank you.
I swear we will do this again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Love everything about this.